The last few years have been tough ones for small private colleges across the country. Nearly 40 of them have closed since 2016, according to a report from Inside Higher Ed, including Newbury College in Brookline earlier this year and Mount Ida in Newton the year before. And as costs rise, demographics change, and students increasingly favor career training over traditional liberal arts education, Moody Analytics predicts that 1 in 5 small schools still open are in danger of closing. Last year, then-President Miriam Nelson announced that Hampshire College in Amherst would only survive if it found a merger partner and shouldn't take a freshman class in the fall. That triggered concern from New England's Board of Higher Ed accreditors and prompted the campus community and Hampshire alumni to jump into action. Among them, documentary filmmaker Ken Burns. And today, the future of the college is starting to look up. With a new president at the helm, Hampshire just had its accreditation renewed. Burns is leading a $60 million fundraising campaign, and the school plans to accept a full class next year. That new president, Edward Wingenbach, recently sat down with Jim Braude to discuss.
President Wingenbach, it's great to meet you.
Oh, thanks for inviting me.
So when they introduced you as the 8th president, were you worried they were going to say the 8th and final president of Hampshire College? You were, right?
I was not at all worried about it. I wouldn't have taken the job if I wasn't confident we could succeed.
How, guys, you've only been there a few months. How have you survived so far? People thought Hampshire was hanging by a thread.
Hampshire was not hanging by a thread. Hampshire had spent a little more than it should have and brought in a little less revenue than it could, and hadn't done the work it needed to do to bring those two into alignment. And we've done that now, and are in good shape going forward.
Well, you're in good shape in part because you have a pretty high-profile, respected guy who's pledged to raise $60 million. Was that initiated by you, or did Burns reach out to you and the school?
So last spring, some of the alums who were upset about the possibility of Hampshire disappearing organized and started raising money. When I came in August, now that we're committed to remaining independent, those groups all came back in, and we're all working together now. So the $60 million campaign that was launched last week is a Hampshire College effort.
You know, one of the things I've read about what you've done is dramatically rework the curriculum, abolishing traditional academic departments, and replacing them with what exactly?
Right. So at Hampshire, students design their own path and their own course of studies, culminating in a year-long project that's sort of like a miniature version of a dissertation for undergraduates. What we're organizing around that traditional structure at Hampshire is our faculty and our students will be focusing on big questions that matter to contemporary society.
Like what,
so
for
questions
example?
like environments and change, and how do we interact with not just the natural environment, but the built environment, the cultural environment. How do we change them? How do they change us? Or
you mean the whole school, everybody in the school will focus on some aspect of that? Is that what you're saying?
Every member of our faculty will affiliate with one of these 4 areas and will orient some of their teaching around it. And our first-year students will be in a year-long, significant, maybe a third of their first-year seminar, where they join the inquiry into one of those big, relevant contemporary questions.
I read that you're reinventing the future of higher education was your quote. Is that what you're talking about, or is it more broad than that?
I think that the future of the liberal arts should be moving beyond majors. That you mentioned in your introduction that students are increasingly picking vocational or career-focused
I think you were
trains.
shaking your head at me angrily when I did that. Is that
I
true?
wasn't angry. I was just, it was more in sorrow than anger. I think it's true. I think that what that overlooks is that a liberal arts education, which is one in which students learn how to solve problems, learn how to collaborate, understand how to gather resources together in order to ask questions that haven't been asked, is the best preparation for the jobs of the future that don't exist yet, 8 years, 10 years from now. And majors aren't designed to do that. What we do at Hampshire is specifically designed to develop those kind of entrepreneurial skills that a student will need when they graduate and go off into a world full of uncertainty.
So I looked up some of the things you taught in your former life, and maybe in your new life. You taught the oxymoronically, I think that's a word, named politics and morality. How do you apply that to current events in this country?
Well, that course was about trying to get students to look at multiple sides of an issue and reach some conclusions about how one should approach deep questions that are really meaningful to us. I think what that course would model that would be good for our modern society is being willing to look at all sides of an issue, think about them sympathetically, the people who don't agree with me, how do they understand a position? Why do they think this thing that I find abhorrent is actually important and valuable?
What if there aren't all sides of an issue? Let's take two examples. I know you didn't mean just climate. The jury is in on climate disruption. Los Angeles Times doesn't even print letters to the editor from the other side saying there is another side. Vaccination. How do you deal with that on those political issues when there really isn't another credible side?
Right. Well, I think that's a different question from politics and morality. There's a question of politics and truth. That might be a different course. I think in an educational institution where obligations are to advance knowledge, we don't have to deal with things that aren't true.
We are in a post-fact environment, at least in this political world. Do you worry about that trickling down? Do you worry that that becomes the new normal in some ways in political debate?
I worry that it will be the new normal if colleges and universities don't focus in the ways that Hampshire does in helping students learn how to ask the right questions and to evaluate the information they need to answer them in ways that are productive. If people don't learn those skills in colleges and they spend 4 years focused on things that are too narrow or not meaningful, then we will end up in that world.
Yeah, Hampshire was not implicated in the varsity blues thing, which obviously everybody's talking about all over the country. When I've talked to people about this, including Andrew Lelling was here himself a few months ago, the U.S. Attorney who's leading this charge, I said to him, I don't understand what the difference is between someone making a huge donation to a school and their kid getting in who otherwise might not be qualified, and people breaking the law like these people that he's charging. What is the difference? Is there a difference? You're trying to raise $60 million bucks through Ken Burns.
Right. So I've had the same question. I'm not really sure I understand why that scandal is different from the scandal of people having access to college because their parents went to that college or because they can make a donation for a school, right? I don't see there's a difference in kind, but not in type. And the difference here seems to me one about making it illegal to undermine the legitimacy of this consumer good in a way that people don't like. And at a place like Hampshire, we don't have that kind of connection between fundraising and admissions. We're trying to raise funds from our alums, and Ken's helping us do that in order to support all of the students that we admit.
Let's go back to you before we leave. 14 people in this class. You have committed that in the fall of 2020 you go back to the traditional levels, which I guess is somewhere in the 300 range.
300 to 400. Yeah.
What do you say to the kid who is partial to the Hampshire College approach to higher ed, but is nervous about committing to a school that they're not 100% convinced has as healthy a future as you do? What do you say to that person?
I say that they should be convinced. Our accreditation is solid. We have a financial plan that has been reviewed broadly that is stable now and stable in the future. We have massive support from people from our alumni community we're $11 million into this $60 million campaign, and we have the resources in reserve to weather any gaps in that. And so I would say to that student, you're coming to Hampshire College at a really exciting time. We're launching our next 50 years. We're launching a new version of our curriculum that is increasingly relevant. And you have an opportunity to come to Hampshire and do the kind of work now that you would go to another college in order to do after you graduate. And you should come here to do that.
I hope they buy it. Good luck to you. It's a great school. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure to meet you. President Ed Wingenbach.